Hello, and welcome to The Art of Being Human. Now, we've talked about psychology and what it is to a certain degree. We have talked about personality and what it is. We've talked about self-concept and what it is. And so I want to get back to psychology and kind of get back to the roots of what this class really is. But first, I want to read something that I read on the internet. I wrote it down, written by David Wolfe. And this is what he says. He says, "You are the books you read, the movies you watch, the music you listen to, the people you spend time with, the conversations you engage in. Choose wisely what you feed your mind." Now, I think it's an excellent quote because we do have some responsibility as to who we become. Because even though our genetics will never change, our social environment can. And if we're mixed up in a social environment that's not healthy and not good, that can't help but have an effect on us. And we need to be able to change that. And we have the intelligence and we have the ability to change what we can change. Now, we can't change everything, but we can change some things. You can be careful what you read. You can be careful what you look at on television. You can be careful about the people that you associate with. And so there are influences that you can have on your own personality that way. We know that there is a nature-nurture thing that goes on, and the nature thing is what you are born with. It's what you have inherited. And the nurture is what happens to you in your social life as you grow up. And so therefore, we know that there's an interplay on that, and one plays off from the other, and we can't help that. But we do have some choices that we can make. Now, I want to get into psychology and what it is. Every so often, I go back and I review what the roots of this class is, because we can take all kinds of twists and turns. We did chronic illnesses for over a year. We may get back to some of that again, but I'm not planning on it immediately. But we do need to get back every so often as to what the nature of psychology is. Psychology is not the study of the mind. I'll tell you that right off. It's what you would think I would say, but it isn't. Psychology is a study of behavior, observable behavior. Why is this so important? Observable behavior is what we can see, and it's a study of our behavior as that can be seen by other people. That makes it observable. It's not a study of the mind because we can't directly access the mind. Now, there's a lot that's being done in terms of research so that you can get into the mind, but basically, we have to make inferences about the mind from what we see. If I see somebody screaming, I know they're upset. But if they don't tell me they're upset and they're not screaming, and I walk by them and say, "How are you today?" They say, "I'm fine." How am I to know the difference? They're not fine, but I don't know that. I can only base my inferences, my judgments about a person by what I can actually observe about them. So this is just something that you need to be aware of. It's a study of observable behavior. You cannot see emotions. You cannot see fear. You cannot see creativity, but you can see the results of fear and emotions and creativity. You see the results of it. And the results of it is what people are doing. If I sit down and I paint a picture, then you know that I'm in a creative frame of mind because you can see that. But if I sit there and I'm looking at a book and thinking about creating a picture, but I haven't done it yet, I'm just thinking about it, then you don't see that. You don't see that part of me. We're limited in psychology because the mind is so complicated that we just can only comment on what we see. Now, if we do medical tests, and we can see what happens as a result of medical tests, then we have something we can base our assumptions on. But it has to be something we can see. If we have a medical test, there are results to the test. Yes, you're high in this area, or you're low in that area. Or we take an IQ test, and we can ascertain what the person's IQ test is, and then we can ascertain what their IQ is. You know, a lot of people don't like testing and they don't think it's fair and they think that it doesn't give good results. But I can tell you from years of experience, if you get a very good clinician that is well trained, you can tell an awful lot from aptitude tests, IQ tests. You can basically nail it. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to be 100% right, but it's going to be right more often than it's wrong, and it's going to be quite right, not just in the ballpark, but really close by to what the actual intelligence is. So we have to give credit to the tests that we give and how they become interpreted, because that also tells us a lot about the human being. Now, you make inferences about the mind by watching a person's behavior, and that's how you judge who they are. Are they crying? Are they yelling? Are they screaming? Are they throwing things? Are they kicking a door open? You know, all of these things mean something. And even sleeping is observable behavior. I went to a conference once. I was a high school teacher for part of my career, and I went to a musical conference, and we had students with us, and they paired us off so there would be two of us in a room. And the lady that I was with, the girl student that I was with, had some problems, and half the night she screamed in her dreams. And I never woke her up, because she was asleep, she wasn't conscious, and she wouldn't have been aware of what she was doing, but she would yell and she would kick and she would move her arms like she was in a boxing match, and it matched what I knew about what her life was like. And so what you do a lot in your dreams is that you dream about what your life is like. There's certain segments of your dreams that are very symbolic of what you're going through as a human being. And I just kind of observed the way that she was. And then when she woke up finally, I'd stayed up most of the night because I couldn't sleep with her behaving this way. And I woke up, and she woke up, and I said, well, how did you sleep last night? Oh, wonderful. The bed was so comfortable. I slept very well. Now, she would not have been aware of what she did. That's why sleep studies are done. But she did have a very emotional, volatile sleeping pattern, and I'm sure that it meant a lot in terms of her daily life. And I had a chance to observe that, but of course I never let her know that I did that, and I never commented to her about it. Now, behavior can be observed and then judgments made about the mind. This is what I've been saying all about your mind. We cannot see the mind directly. So behavior has to be judged in the context of what is going on when the behavior occurs. You know, if you're in the middle of watching a game, your behavior has to be judged in accordance to your behavior. Is it appropriate for the situation that you're in? Well, if you're watching a ball game and you're very invested in one team winning, and you're yelling out and telling people to play well and all of that, that's not unusual behavior. But if you're in a movie theater and everything's quiet and suddenly you yell out, that might not be appropriate. So everything that gets judged about human behavior has to be judged according to the context that it's in. Otherwise, the judgments that you make may not be accurate. And you have to understand that behavior has multiple causes. Two people can behave the same for different reasons. Two people can act differently for the same reasons. And the human being is very complicated, and you can't just judge it. You've got to remember that you have a stake in this. If you're watching somebody's behavior and judging it, are you judging it according to what you are going through and any kind of thing that you're experiencing in your own life? Or are you judging it as a fair observer that's not being influenced by anything? It's hard to say. You know, I was watching a television show yesterday, and a psychologist was telling a person, you don't want to go to court on a child abuse problem or a custody battle because you may be sitting before a judge that has it out against certain people, and you happen to look like one of those people, and he is judging you according to what he is going through himself. Or you may be sitting before a judge that is a female judge, and she has feminine issues, and she may be judging you according to what her issues are. One of the things that happens if you're going to be a psychologist or a counselor is that you're usually required to go through personal therapy. And I think it's a good idea. You go through the personal therapy so things that affect you in your own life won't interfere with your judgments of others that you happen to be treating. And that's important for a counselor to be able, when they counsel somebody, to leave their own baggage or to leave their own problems to one side and leave them behind, so that then when they treat the person, they treat them not according to what they're going through, but in according to what's best for the person that they're treating. So most counselors actually go through a term of therapy and try to resolve any conflict that they may have, because we've all got them. And when those things get resolved, especially if it's abuse issues or something like that, then you're more able to be a fair judge of character and a fair counselor when you go into the counseling office, when your own material that you're dealing with is not getting in your way. But you have to remember that everybody has something that they're struggling with. And it may be major, it may not be major. Some people are so healthy that they don't have a lot that they're dealing with and everything is fine. But also people who are doing well, they have past things that have happened to them. If those past things have not been resolved, then at any moment they can come up and bother them, and that influences what they do when they're dealing with other people. You're not completely free of what has happened to you in the past unless you're healed of it. And so many people, they shove things down. You know, they don't want to deal with it because they figure they're better off if they don't. They feel better if they don't. But that does have an influence on them and what they do and how they treat other people, even in personal relationships. So it's important to remember this is a complicated field, and I know I'm just kind of talking off the top of my head a little bit here, but it's a complicated field, and you need to keep that in mind. Behavior has multiple causes, and heredity and environment influence the behavior of a person. And people interpret what they experience, and that is subjective. You know, if you are thinking about a certain thing and you believe that a certain thing is true, it may not be, but let's supposing that you believe it's true. People have told you that it's true, so therefore it must be true, or you got it on the internet. That influences you. What you have gone through is your window to the world. What you have gone through and what you believe and what you put into your mind, it's your window to the world. And so therefore you're going to believe what you perceive. Perception is everything. If you perceive something as being true, then you're going to believe it's true, whether it is or not. And that's going to color your judgment, because it's going to affect the way that you believe, it's going to affect the way that you behave, and you need to remember that. Nobody is completely free of having judgments that they base upon perceptions which may or may not be accurate. See, it is really complicated. This is why I think the Bible says you cannot judge lest you be judged, because everybody has something that they're dealing with. Various emotions have physical responses, so you may be having a physical response to an emotion. You know, there is a mind memory, there is a body memory. And when you get into certain situations that bring up the past, you feel it like it was in the present. And you respond to it like it was in the present, even though it was in the past and supposedly resolved. The importance of resolving behavior is the fact that if you don't resolve what bothers you, it from here until it gets healed will occasionally have a kickback effect, and it will occasionally influence the way you think and the way you feel and the way that you behave. It's just there. If it's resolved and you have gone through therapy and it's no longer bothers you, and you're not just hiding from it or running from it, but it truly has been resolved in a healthy way, it's not going to interfere with your life. You may remember it, but it's not going to haunt you. The problem with pushing things down and not dealing with them when they come up is after a while, it haunts you. It comes back every so often, whether you want it to or not, because it's still very raw in your subconscious. And when you get into a situation that's a little bit similar to what you went through, it all comes back, and you remember it, or you remember the feelings that were attached to it, and you go through it again and again and again. And it may be a little bit different, maybe it's not quite as intense, but you go through it again and again and again, and it changes your behavior. And so you have to think about that. The emotions that people deal with are depression, grief, anger, aggression, rage, hate, fear, anxiety, guilt, remorse, shame, worry, joy, but also happiness, feeling giddy, overwhelmed, peace, calmness, excitability. Now, I know I haven't read them all, but I've read most of them. And what people are most concerned about are what they consider to be the negative emotions, such as depression, grief, anger, anxiety, aggression, rage, hate, fear, things like that. And when they go to a doctor to get help with those emotions, they want the emotions to go away. They're not searching so much for what caused these emotions to begin with, because what you have to remember is that there's no such thing as a symptom without a cause. There's always a cause for everything that you're going through, and you may not remember what that cause is. For example, and this is just something I'm concocting out of my own head, it doesn't apply to me at all, but supposing I had a terrible fear of dogs. I just had to be away from dogs. A dog walks by and I run away. I hide. I can't be with dogs. And I want to have help with this, so I go to a counselor, I go to a psychiatrist, I go to somebody that's able to help me, and I say, I've got to get rid of the fear of dogs. But I don't know where that fear came from, because it happened so long ago that obviously it has a cause, but I don't know what the cause is. If something's happened to you very early in life and you have repressed it, you have forgotten about it, then when it comes back in symbolic forms. You're afraid of dogs. You can't be around animals. You're afraid of all four-legged animals. You're afraid of animals with tails. You're afraid of all of this stuff, and you don't know where it came from. When you go to the doctor, you want to get the relief from the symptoms. If they say, do you remember how did this start? Do you remember how this started? And you say, I don't know, I've had it for years. And that's true. So you have physically and emotionally forgotten what caused the problem, but you got the symptoms of it all over the place. So you want to get rid of the symptoms. You don't necessarily know the cause. So what the counselor has to do is to go into the cause and see if they can find out what caused this to begin with. If they can find out the cause, it'll be a lot easier to treat you for the symptoms. If they can't find the cause, and sometimes that happens, then they'll treat the symptoms. But it's a lot easier if they know the reason for it. And if you know what the reason for it, then you don't have to be so afraid either. I'm going to close with this story because we're getting pretty close to the end of the time here. But I knew a girl in college, and we were friends. We were both taking psychology, and she could walk upstairs, but she couldn't walk downstairs. She was so afraid of going downstairs that she would sit on the step and scooch and go down the steps. One at a time, and then get up when she got to the lowest step. She didn't know why she did this. She didn't know where the fear came from. So I was a psychology student. She was a psychology student. We decided on our own to take a look at this. And as it turns out, her father died in a plane crash, and she saw the plane go down. And so she associated her father's plane going down, he was killed in the crash, with her going down some kind of steps. It was like she had to go down. He went down when he died. Somehow her mind linked those two things together, and as it turned out, she was afraid of going downstairs because it was symbolic of her father with a plane going down, and she saw the plane go down, and he died in the crash. What had happened was he was a pilot, and when he took his own plane up, she would watch him, and he would go around her, and he would dip his wing to salute her as he flew by. That was an acknowledgement, kind of like a goodbye wave to her. And then his plane went down. He kind of waved goodbye to her as he tipped his wing. The plane went down. He died. And so now she has trouble going down places. Now, because she has that understanding, she was able to face that fear, resolve it, and then it didn't have to bother her again. That's one example of how knowing what's happened to you in your past is certainly a help to understanding who you are now. It's all very complicated, but it's all very nice. It's all it helps people, and I'm glad to be a part of this profession. So I'm going to close it now. We're just about out of time. We'll continue with this next time. Please join me then.